Welcome to the Diverse Bookshelf. I'm Samia Aziz, celebrating the power of literature and the voices of authors and changemakers from the global majority. Join me as we explore the stories that inspire, connect, and transform our world. Let's uncover the stories that truly matter together. This week, I'm joined by former cricket superstar Azeem Rafiq. When Azeem Rafiq was a young boy playing cricket near his home in Pakistan, he could never have foreseen that this sport would change his life forever. He fell in love with the game quickly, and it wasn't long before the white flannels and green grass felt like home to him. When he moved to England, he became the youngest man to captain a Yorkshire side and the first person of Asian descent to do so. His talent was undeniable, and doors were opening for him. But there was something Azeem was bottling up, and it was about to explode out of him and shake the whole cricket world and wider society out of their slumber. His book, It's Not Banter, It's Racism, is the never-before-told truth behind the racism accusations that shocked a nation, from the moment Azeem spoke up to the resulting events that have altered his world entirely. I'm so glad to be speaking to Azeem today. Just a disclaimer. This episode mentions feelings and attempts of suicide, miscarriage, and the loss of a child. Azeem, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Diverse Bookshelf podcast. It's so wonderful to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Walaikum assalam. Yeah, I'm all right.
So I know that you've had a really eventful career, I'd say, up until now, an eventful life full of success, but highs and lows and challenges as well. And I'm looking forward to talking about that with you today. You write so openly about it in your book as well. But I'd like to start almost at the very beginning. So I want to know what it is for you that you really love or loved so much about cricket. What drew you to the sport? What is it about the game of cricket, as opposed to, say, I don't know, like football or tennis? What is it about cricket that you love so much?
Yeah, look, firstly, thanks for having me on the podcast. Look, I was born in Karachi in Pakistan, and to be honest, it was just part of life. It's part of everyday life. It is what everyone in Pakistan, it's a one sport nation. Every street corner, every building, every bit of land that you'll see, there'll be a cricket match going on. So that's what that was my early life. And yeah, as soon as I could remember walking, it was very much getting down. We lived in a very bustling area. And then as soon as a little bit of sun went down, it was just getting downstairs and just playing cricket. And yeah, I fell in love with it. I used to come home from school, and at that time, there was like a half an hour period where when I got home, my granddad used to watch, they used to be on the national television, there used to be like a highlights package of an old Pakistan game. And I used to sit, that was part of my everyday routine. Getting home, getting showered, having food, and then watching that for half an hour. And then as soon as that finished, basically the weather cool enough to get downstairs and play. And that's just what I did. Yeah, I think that's very much why cricket as opposed to any other sports.
Yeah, I think one of the almost like the advantages of the weather in Pakistan is that cricket is a sport that you can play all year round because it's warm, you can be outside. I know in summer you have to wait until the sun goes down a little bit, which isn't the case like in the UK. Like I remember school, like cricket was very much just a summer activity. It was just something we'd play, and much like rounders as well. It's just a summer sport. And so I guess you had, and you write about this in the book as well, like just the opportunity to play so much more because you'd lived the first 10 plus years of your life in Karachi. You had so much more time and opportunities to play cricket than your counterparts that grew up in the UK, which is really interesting. When did it become for you something that was more than just something you enjoyed doing and something you wanted to? It's not just about whether or not this could be your job. It brought with it so much dedication and hard work and sacrifice and commitment. When did, in your mind, you think that switch came?
You know what? I'm not sure, because like for me, I just love the game. It was just I lived and breathed cricket, and as I said, it was in Pakistan. It's a one sport nation. When I first moved to the UK, that initial shock of not being able to play cricket every day was something that I had to try and get used to. And as you say, like in schools and stuff, I got lucky. A teacher of mine loved cricket, played recreational cricket. So because of that, we actually did cricket a lot more than most schools would anyway. In terms of professional, look, I got asked to go to these trials as a 12-year-old. I didn't really know what trials I was going for, what trials were, or what professional sport was. I just saw it as another opportunity to play cricket. And it was in the winter, so it was indoors. And then from there, I got asked to go to another one. And same again, I didn't really take any notice of it and carried on. And then I got to the Yorkshire sort of final trials. And yeah, again, for me, very much it was the opportunity to play cricket. And I don't think that changed for me much till actually I signed my first professional contract and played a professional game, my first team game. That's when I sort of, oh, hold on a minute, this is my job now. And actually, everyone will talk about you're at your best when you're actually just enjoying the game and having that naivety of youth and that fearlessness. When we're young, we don't see what can go wrong. Yeah, I to be honest, for a very long time, I didn't really understand what professional sport was or what it meant to be paid to play cricket. I just loved and adored every second of me being involved in the game, and that's just what took me there. So I would say as a lot of things in my life seem to have happened, is very organically just happened as opposed to any sort of plan towards it.
Yeah, that sounds so good, and it just, I think, a real testament to how much you loved cricket and just the desire you had as a child and a young person to just continue playing. I guess that's what you want. You just look for opportunities that you can keep doing what you want to love. And I think such an honor in life to be able to do the thing that you love so much. But you grew up in a Pakistani family. So how did you feel any sort of, I don't know what the right word is, like tension between maybe the view of the importance of a more academic route as opposed to going down the sports route? Or was it that cricket is like this amazing thing that your family were completely on board with you deciding to focus more on that than an academic route?
Yeah, look, I didn't have any pressures from that point of view. I'm very lucky in that I got, as I found out a lot later, not only my family sacrificed a lot for me to be able to pursue my dreams or what they thought was my dreams. And so I think from that point of view, I didn't feel that, but I was, again, very lucky, or I did well in my academics when I wanted to. When I put my head to it, I did well, but my family was very much behind me, and throughout our family, my other siblings, everyone has been encouraged and empowered to do what they want to do. And also, I think within that question, there's this sort of thing that South Asian families, parents want everyone to go down an educational route and stuff. I've seen firsthand the discrimination that happens in the game, in sports, and in our society. And as a parent now, I want my boy and girls to not go through or not experience anything, the discrimination that I have. And actually, I just want them to be safe. So if I think that something is going to make them unsafe psychologically or physically, then I'm going to obviously get them to do something else. And that's where a lot of that comes from. But also there is parents, on the caveat of that, there is parents who literally sacrifice everything for their children to get the opportunity to play sport. But unfortunately, as we continually see in our society, that if you are from a marginalized community and if you have if you are a Muslim, we are discriminated against considerably. And that's just a reality of what we live in. Yeah, I've got away from your question. Look, I personally didn't have that pressure. And I think a lot of that is because my dad has had nothing to do with sports in his life. And none of my family have had anything to do with sports in their life, and specifically in England. So those scars that build up, that generational trauma that builds up, it wasn't there for us. As I was just going and playing cricket and enjoying what I was playing, they were actually it was new to them as well. So I think that's one of the reasons I didn't have, because I look at it myself now, And I'll be honest with you, that, yeah, I find it really difficult to, when my kids, so my boy and girl, they do boxing and swimming now, and I find it difficult to even encourage them to do cricket, because why would I want them to carry the stars that I carry with me on every given day? And that's trying to unpick and nuance that whole conversation around South Asian parents and education. We've got all of these sort of on the surface throwaway. We've got to actually look deeper into that. And generally, if someone, a human being, goes and does something else, is because where they were or what you want them to do, they didn't feel included. But you can't, this whole thing around inclusion is so much more than just the throwaway comments that gets thrown out and the superficial things and the tick boxy that happens around it. And just that small snippet of that question, I just wanted to go into that a little bit, because I've heard and seen our own community start to believe those stereotypes, as opposed to going, no, actually, that they are stereotypes and that is all they are. The data and the numbers disprove that. But if there is someone that has chosen a different path, there's a reason for that. And generally people choose a different path because they've been excluded from a particular path.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. And I think you're absolutely right in that. In some ways, it is a stereotype that like Asians want to focus on academics, but I think it's also a reality based on the things that our communities have historically and continue to experience. And we come from communities and places that have been marginalized and are subject to racism on a massive scale. And so for like my parents, I know your family situation is different, but my parents moved to the UK from Pakistan in the 60s and 70s at peak Islamophobic and racist times. And so for them, it's about survival, right? It's about how can we help our next generation survive. We will guide them to careers that are safe, that are going to be successful and respectful. And so that means that these are our preferred career routes. It's not all because we think that as Asians, we think that doctors are superior. It's so much more, as you've said, it's so much more complex than that. And when we ask these questions and when we talk about it, but it's also important to understand that what we're then asking for is for the wider world and institutions to acknowledge these barriers and these experiences and do something about it. If we've had these experiences, that means, as you said, that we've been excluded and that we haven't been welcomed and that these places do not feel safe and accessible to us. And so what can be done about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick you up on one thing. You said peak Islamophobia, 60s and 70s. Sadly, doesn't it feel like we're back there now? And I didn't live through them times, but having spent the summer in the UK, and also I respect and have mentors that did spend time in that years, I would say we are back there and more. And that's the sad reality of what we live in. But unfortunately, this inability for leaders, for institutions, for systems to actually create proper solutions, as I said, it's a draining space. It's a continually tough, a challenging. What other choices do we have? As you say, our parents, not mine, like a lot of generations, had to survival, and they did everything. They sacrificed everything for us to be able to stand up on our 2 feet. And the fact that we are back there, I'm not going to lie, I think, there's times at the minute where, you turn your phone on and these kids and being killed, and you lose hope and you lose why you're even living at times, I'll be honest with you. And it's been, speaking about the book and speaking about racism in cricket, feels so trivial right now. Just feels so difficult because you feel like, oh my God, I feel lucky to be alive. And it continues to happen. Unfortunately, history continues to we continue to not learn from history. And we're in some tricky and some tough times in the world at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I echo all of the sentiments there. It is incredibly difficult, I think, to just, because all we can do, people like you and I, is just bear witness to what's going on and to do something about it in our own lives, so we can boycott and we can protest and we can do the things that we think will help. But there is a level of helplessness there. But hopefully, I guess as well, we have to also live in hope that we know that something has to fundamentally change because the world cannot continue the way that it's going. But I want to go back to your experience in cricket. Reading the book, there's some really, I think, very heartbreaking examples that you give of being a teenager and being subject to racist slurs. And there was an incident where you were pinned down and wine was poured down your throat. It's really awful. It's bullying at best, right? It's just absolutely terrible. But I also understand that when you are a young person, especially, this would have been like early 2000s, at that time when we didn't really have the language that we have right now around Islamophobia and race. We didn't understand the way that employers should be behaving and how these institutions and safe spaces should be protecting us. But also as a young person, it is so difficult to vocalize your experiences and how you're feeling. But how did you feel at that time trying to navigate all of this while also knowing that you have talent and this desire to really succeed? What was that like?
Yeah, again, we're talking about early 2000s. Everyone knows that P word is racist and out of order and unacceptable and a hate crime. Everyone knows that, pinning down a child, which is what I was, and pouring red wine down my throat constitutes a lot of different criminalities. And there's that people didn't know how to behave. As a 15-year-old, if I'd have gone and told my father at the time, I wouldn't have played cricket again. I had two choices. I either keep quiet and more or less erase it out of memory, or try to, or I go tell someone. If I tell someone, I don't play cricket again. And if I try and erase it out of memory, I clearly don't, and it's trauma that I carry with me. And imagine as a 15-year-old, I went and told someone, and I would have never, forget my father, they would have frozen me out of everything. But you think of, I went and told my director of cricket, my CEO, my own supposedly players union rep. I went and had a conversation with them in 2018 after the loss of my son. And that's when I had this conversation with them openly, and they got rid of me 7 days later. Imagine what they would have done to me when I was 15. That's the conundrum I was battling in. And yeah, we are told to look the other way while abuse is happening. That's how we were brought up. But you've got to be twice better. That's how we were brought up. And that, as you say, survival, that's the mode that, you've operated in. But, our generations before us have sacrificed a lot for us to get to a point where we stand on our 2 feet and go, no, actually, no more. And that moment came for me, because of the loss of my son, really. Because, when you've gone through that, there's nothing anyone else can do that can put you close to that pain. There literally isn't. And the last few years has been difficult. I've had death threats. Our house has been attacked. Business has been attacked. Had constant online abuse. Families had to suffer because of it. We've had to leave the country. Whole host of things. There's nowhere near the pain that, carrying your son from hospital to the graveyard. Yeah, I think for me, very much, I had no choice but to look the other way. I had no choice but to just try and forget about it. But you don't forget them things, and it sticks to this day. And yeah, what would I advise my younger self if that happened to me as a 15? If I was 15 today and it happened to me, I would absolutely hope that I would act in a different way because of the last few years but it's all right me saying that now as a 33-year-old that's what I would do as a 15-year-old. But if as a 15-year-old I don't have the experiences or the courage potentially to do that, knowing full well that it would have been the end of at that point no career. But what I would advise others, parents, others listening, my own kids, I think I would swap the no career with the scars that I carry with me. I know how painful and difficult every given day at times is for me. I'm a positive person. I'm with a positive outlook and try, and in true sports person style, look for hope and look for positive in everything, but not going to shy away from. And I've been very open in the book and publicly about the challenges I have with my mental health because of that. And that isn't something that goes overnight.
I think what I would also hope if there was a 15-year-old, you or a 15-year-old person today that was struggling with the things that you went through at that time, knowing that you as you right now, a few years ago, did essentially blow the whistle on this, did expose it, did talk about it, took it to, I don't think there was anything more you could have done really to, one, raise awareness, but try and get some accountability and some change. And I think that will have such a long-lasting impact on anybody that may face something going forwards. Because to be the first person to speak out, essentially, especially on the scale that you did, I think that there must have required a huge amount of courage, among so many other things, but courage for sure, because for you to experience what you did, you must have also known, and obviously because you'd seen your also other players and teammates experiencing similar things, perhaps to a lesser degree, but definitely experiencing similar things, and also seeing that they were also unable to speak out about it. If it happened to you, it must have happened to people before you, and clearly nobody had said anything or nobody had done anything, and you broke that silence. And I really hope that will help people moving forward, and we hope that it will help institutions as well just face up to the issues and the problems out there are, and to do something about them. It's not enough to just give it lip service. And also, like, you talk about the need to talk in terms of institutions and structures rather than individuals, because it's very easy to get rid of individuals, to distance yourself from individuals. The problem is never with individuals, it's with the systems that empower and embolden those individuals, and also to recruit them, right? Especially in this day and age, they're so easy to do background check on people that decide what they're like. And so, yeah, I think that's very important and very important point that you make throughout the book and in your work as well. You've spoken just now about how it was the loss of your son, and I just want to take a moment to really sit with you in your grief about that. I'm so sorry for everything that your family has endured, especially with the loss of your child. As you said, I think it's a pain and experience that doesn't compare to anything else. But yeah, you spoke about how the loss of your child was the thing that really, I think, I don't know, like it sparked something within you that made you feel like this is enough. Like, I can't, this is just not okay. And it was really, I think, sad and difficult reading about that, because one of the things I think that really stood out to me was that you were going through this absolutely awful experience, this awful situation, and there was no support from your teammates, from the institution and the workplace as a whole. Very few people actually supported you at the time of the funeral, and also the continued sort of mental health struggles that you had. Nobody helped you through that. In fact, at that time, people were still taking you into a room and shouting at you about things that were actually completely not straightforward anyway, and just a bit awful and ridiculous. But it also happened at the time when there seemed to be something that was going to fundamentally change in your career anyway, because there had been a previous issue of bullying that you'd spoken out about as well. And so it seemed like almost that these two things were like crumbling at the same time and clashing at the same time. And I wondered if you could just speak about that particular time.
Yeah, one of the hardest times of my life, really. Yeah, it was so difficult. I spent since age of 12 being involved in the Yorkshire setup. I was three times better than everyone else. I captained England under 50s, I captained England under 19s. I captained Yorkshire, I was the youngest ever Yorkshire captain. All that happened because I was, and a long way ahead of everyone else. But there was something I was struggling with mentally. I captained Yorkshire in 2012, and 6 months later, I was on the other side of my balcony ready to take my own life. Them two things, if you look at my life, my dreams, and think how possibly that could have happened. And all that was because of the race abuse. And it built up. And for me, when I lost my son, and this is why I still struggle today with, there is a large part of cricket who, to this day, despite independent investigations, despite numerous investigations, despite numerous people admitting that's what they did, still will not believe my experiences. And that I find hurtful, because I remember that time like it happened yesterday. I remember the day that we finished the warm-up and the director of cricket got the phone call and to say that my wife was in hospital. And I remember the next 5 days like they happened 20 minutes ago. And you know what? Off the back of that, those that I'd spent best part of most of my adult life with me, stayed at my house. My mum had cooked. We're very hospitable. And my mum had cooked food for these people. And not only was the support not there, and you can probably tell it hurts me to this day, that probably always will. They used the loss of my son to get rid of me because only a few months before I'd raised racism and bullying. And when that sort of, as I look back, they're the people that I spend most of my life with, supposedly being on the same team, supposedly playing towards the same goal. And that's the response I got. As I've spoken about in the book, one player came to the funeral and, yeah, they used the loss of my son to end my cricket career. The racism and the bullying that was so prevalent that it was just part of everyday discourse and no one thought anything was wrong with it. And how dare I speak up about it? And the fact that I did, they couldn't even that to one side when I lost my son. And that says a lot about the human beings that I was surrounded by, to be honest. And as I said, to this day, sadly, unfortunately, you can't, you seem to struggle to have a conversation with a racist. And I'll be honest with you, it's the thing that, there's a lot of things that I try and move forward. It's the thing that I really struggle with to this day. The way I got treated around lost my son, Martin Moxon, director of cricket, getting me in a room and shouting at me. The way they used that to limit my opportunities to play, the way they got rid of me because I had raised these concerns, was all really challenging and difficult. But in that it showed exactly what I was talking about. Really, that you are, you'll have heard this in your life, and I certainly have. All, no, you're all right. That when a racist is being racist, they say, and you're with them. No, you're all right. It's them what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're not like them.
Yeah, but you are only okay till you stay in your lane and put up with the racist abuse that we're giving you, put up with the bullying, because let's be right, we are dehumanized, right? The language and the discourse from our politicians, from our leaders, ever since 9/11, we are lesser. We are the lesser people in society. And that, how dare we stand up? We should be grateful. I should be grateful for that we're being allowed to live in this society. Yeah, it's something that I struggle with to date, driving the car when I'm on my own, when the clock's ticking at night, because on a human level, I just find it genuinely still worrying that anyone would treat anyone like that around something so difficult. And not only is that to this day, there's not an acceptance of that. Those people, the director of cricket and wider cricket people, have more sympathy for those that were racist as opposed to how I was treated. And I find that really difficult to stomach, to be honest.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You go into a lot of detail in the book about it, and it's just, it just seems so cruel if we just, even on a human level, let alone professionally. You don't behave like that professionally. But on a personal human level, to not just take the time to sit with somebody who was essentially in many ways, your friend, somebody you've known for years, you've worked with, you've played games with, you've shared so much with over the years. And it just seems like everybody turned on you because didn't want you to continue raising issues. But I understand, as it became a bigger thing for you externally, when you started talking about it a little bit more openly, initially it happened by accident. You didn't really plan for it to happen. You were being interviewed and somebody asked you about racism, and then that's when you started talking about it, which is also interesting. And I guess as Muslims as well, we always think that, this is just the way that it was meant to be. This is Allah's plan, even though you never at that point intended for it to happen. But I guess it changed your life in so many ways, because it then became something so big and sincere and serious with huge ramifications, hopefully. But when you decided that you were going to take it to the point of having this investigation and essentially this legal route, How did you come to that decision? Because I know that you were dealing with so much. Your mental health had taken a real hit over those years, especially. And also you knew that this would be like the final nail in the coffin of your cricketing career. And there were implications for your family as well and the safety of all of you. So what was your thought process in deciding that this is what you wanted to do and I guess that you had to do?
Yeah, Samuel, look, actually, again, I was just broken. I was just a broken human being. Sometimes I look back to some of the interviews and some of the things that early on, as I said, like that first interview was like an accident. And then Yorkshire's response to that was, oh, he's not said Yorkshire. And then it was just, I then did another interview. And then when they tried to tell journalists and brief out that they'd been in regular contact with me, the Inclusivity and Diversity board member had been in regular contact with me. And just to give you a picture of what that regular contact, like, firstly, I actually thought he was on my side. I didn't realize till the subject access request that he was one of the biggest backstabbers I'd probably come across. But more importantly, that regular contact was so I went to Umrah, so I did a broadcast message. I opened a new business, so I did a broadcast message. My daddy passed away, so I did a broadcast message. And they used that to say that they'd been in regular contact with me. And then that got my deja vu feelings. That got me quite irritable, if I'm being honest. But even then, legal and all of this, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just waking up on every given day, and whatever my heart said, I was following it, really. And I don't know, it took a long time for me to realize the impact or even the scale of what was going on, if I'm being honest. And I think that probably helped me. Even walking into the select committee, and bearing in mind from the first interview to select committee was 14 months, August 2020 to November 21, or maybe longer actually, longer. So in that time, this was like my life 24/7. We were being harassed very early on, had threats, and if you don't stop talking about Yorkshire, we'll do this to your business and X, Y, Z. You know, the briefings, the powerful figures, they were all at it. Let's be, I think it's beyond miracle, but also, as we say, it's Allah's plan. Every time, every given day, they try to use their power. I'm a kid from Pakistan, Barnsley. I was taking on the fabric of the British life, Yorkshire County Cricket Club, and some of the biggest people. And they left no stone unturned. Bearing in mind, I sat on national television, international television, and talked about how close I came to taking my own life. These guys left no stone unturned to get me to get over that edge. But I didn't really know what I was doing. Even when I went to that room at the select committee, my life over the hour and 45 changed in ways that I could have never imagined. And that was something I was just on an every given daily basis. I was having to live through. As I said, I sometimes go to get the bread and come back home and not get the bread, come back without bread. My kids, I had my daughter November 20, August 20, I spoke out November 20. So she only saw me in this, while I'm trying to put food on the table. I don't even know how I've kept any sort of sanity. I don't know in some ways how I'm either in any sort of functionability. I'm not sure if I am. And yeah, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't nice. It just felt every time they tried to do something, they created evidence, right? they went to them and got caught out thanks to Apple and the iPhone and the location where I was. They tried to say that I had meetings with them when I was in completely different end of the country. They tried everything. And to be able to take that on my own, and luckily I got the most amazing support outside of cricket. Firstly, the journalist George Zabel, who sacrificed his personal relationships, his career, his sanity. He had to have cameras installed at his house, threats, everything, and still to this day, suffering. James Butler, incredible behind me. My family, the professionals who I've spoken about in the book, Power Sport, Mark Lefley, Jennifer Robinson, Paris Gracia, and then further on, a little bit further on, Sonia Campbell and Harry Eccles-Williams. And actually, you know what? Despite everything that I've gone through, everything I continue to face, I feel the most luckiest person on this planet. And that's where this has done, is brought me in our religion. If you lose a child, you become a Jannati. That's what kept us going. That's what kept us alive. But also, people go through their whole life and Allah doesn't give them a chance to come close to him. I saw that as Allah saying to me, come close to me, come to me. And it's changed me as a person. I woke up and lived my life of runs and wickets. And I wake up now with a purpose which is far bigger than me. And so it got me closer to my religion. I hope that's not the way it happens for other people, but that's what Allah did. That's what Allah planned for me. And then even in life, I'm not going to lie, life is challenging. Life can be quite difficult. And I always said to people close to me, I'll find out the real effects when things die down 4 or 5 years down the line. You know what? I am seeing and feeling them well and proper. The covert racism, slashing down on my work, blocking work, all of that. I'm professionally, but also relationships. And that's the thing that the sort of 40 minutes we've had on, I'm quite an emotional guy. And the relationships, and I've lost relationships which I've treasured, but again, created a path for me, and I've got my full trust in Allah. And again, as I said, like from a purpose point of view, people go their whole life, achieve everything, but they don't have a purpose. I drive out of bed every day and try and do whatever I can. And I get contacted on a weekly basis from people that are struggling, being abused. And I try and do whatever I can within my powers to help. And that, again, Allah gives you responsibility if He feels that you can fulfill it. So life is full of challenges. Ultimately, you've got to trust Allah's plan. And my father said to me on the night of DCMS that I'd done on that day more than any runs and wickets or Ashes series or World Cups could have done. And you know what? I've lived most of my life for my father, for my parents. I'm the eldest son. I feel that responsibility and I want that responsibility. And to hear that on that day, I slept well that night. And it said, so there's some things in life that are bigger than yourself. And for me, this whole last few years has been, and it continues to be, masses of learning, but also an opportunity to really impact other people's lives in a positive manner. And that's something I'm incredibly privileged to have that responsibility.
I think it's so incredibly powerful and brilliant, just how open you are about your mental health, because it's something as a society in the UK that we still struggle with, for men and for women, but especially for men, to open up about how they're feeling. And you have had a really rough time, I think is an understatement, with your mental health over the years. And part of that obviously is due to the racism and the bullying that you were experiencing and didn't have an outlet, didn't know what to do about it, was not able to confront it. And also I think we're not able to understand it, because you talk a lot about the microaggressions. So the small words or the small phrases or the leaving you out or the refusing to do things. And this is a word that we've only understood in the last decade or so. But when it came about, to me, it put so many of my experiences into context. As a hijabi woman, like I'm at university, like I've had comments so many times from professors, older white professors, about my ears, about if my ears are warm, I'm just like, we're having a conversation about philosophy. Why are you asking me about my ears? If I can hear properly, and so these small comments that do not seem overtly racist, or the way that if I walk into a shop, sometimes I can tell from the person at the till that they think I can't speak English, or they think that I'm a certain kind of person. And to be able just to understand that this is what we're talking about, these everyday experiences that continue to frustrate us and knock us down. And just to be able to understand that this is what it's called and it's a real thing, I think did so much for just being able to, I think, validate our own experiences. And I love that you talk about that a lot. So much of what you went through, you did at a time when we didn't have that framework. We didn't have that sort of like sociological, political understanding of these things. And I think there's something really like sad about that. But obviously so many people before you went through a lot of things as well without being able to understand it either. But just more generally, I really hope that a lot of people will find comfort in how outspoken you are about your mental health struggles. You do go into some detail about various situations where you felt like you wanted to take your own life, where you couldn't see the end of what you were dealing with. Really heartbreaking and difficult experiences. And I'm so sorry as well that like you experience such lows, because they're really heartbreaking. But I do hope as well that, as well as helping people face or tackle racism and institutional racism, you're also inspiring people to connect with their mental health and to talk about it and to seek help, because you also talk about your own experiences seeking therapy and how your therapist has helped you and given you the tools and the words sometimes to process what you're going through. So thank you for that. But I wanted to ask, so I think going through difficult things and racism, and also you went through a lot of personal grief and loss as well, it would be completely understandable if alongside like pain and disappointment, there's also frustration and anger. But we know that anger is not a good emotion to carry around, right? Neither is pain, but anger, I think, can be very harmful for how you interact with the world, how that's passed on to next generations. Obviously, you have small children. How has it been for you to process some of that anger, and where would you say you sit now in terms of that really hard feeling of anger?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't feel anger. Like, I feel angry at times and frustrated and like disappointed. But I don't know, when my son, he changed my outlook on life, and I don't see any point of getting angry. You know what? A large part of my feelings, I'd say, is disappointment, and not even frustration, disappointment. I'm just disappointed by, I spent, best part of half my life with people who were just racist. I gave time and my life and my energy to a game that is surrounded by racists. Fortunately, where I thought my support would come from, they were most interested in themselves and trying to look after themselves. So yeah, I don't actually get angry. I get really down. I do ride the lows. I get tired and I get really down, and I think the mental health part is a journey for me. I really do. I don't think there is any fix as such. I think you go through, it's a continual journey, something that I'm appreciative of, but as I've learned tools to try, but ultimately I am a positive person who I want to look at life with hope. I wish I had a bit more naivety about me. As a 33-year-old, I wish I hadn't seen some of the things that I have, but the reality is I have. And now I try and always see I try and see where there's an opportunity to turn it into a positive. And that's where I spend most of my energy. Things like anger and stuff. Look, who doesn't get internally angry? Of course, there are things that, but you find ways to separate yourself from. So I'll give you an example. You talk about change and stuff. And this is the thing you mentioned about individuals. This is why I was so against becoming about individuals, because what did they do? They threw lots of individuals under the bus. They threw lots of individuals to the accountable, and rightly so. They need to be held accountable. The structures stayed tight to each other, because the reality is they're all institutionally racist. That's just a fact. I'm happy to have conversation and go into detail and explain to people why. And what happened? People get bored. People look the other way. And now at Yorkshire, you're back to the people that basically did all of this. You've protected the system because that's all they wanted. They threw it, but actually they've started bringing them individuals back now. And now, as the cycle goes in the British society, the perpetrators are the victims now, and that's sadly what you're dealing with. What I had to do, as an example, for my own health, there was like, you know what, Yorkshire's no longer my club. It's like a toxic relationship. At some point, you've just got to go, you know what? You guys, you are what you are. You will continue to prove my words for decades on from here. The only one thing I will say is everyone that's looked the other way, everyone that's used it for their benefits, and ECB and the leadership of the game who have allowed to go back to its status quo, if a young person, or if a person is subjected to racism and bullying, that ends up lives being lost, I will be in the queue to make sure that these people are held accountable on an individual and an institutional basis. So, from sort of mental health point of view too and stuff, I had to at that point, go, you guys crack on. I can't. You can take the horse to the water, and then at some point, and what religion? Allah says, right? You do what you can, and then you leave the rest to Allah. And look, I'm aware of continual things that continue to happen. Look, the sad reality is change. Nelson Mandela couldn't get these people to change. It would be naive of me to think that I was going to get it done. But the one thing I will continue to do is use whatever voice I have to make sure that, and without any worry, you're not going to have. Unfortunately, again, what the system does is very good at picking people off and giving opportunities and turning them into cheerleaders. I will be the first person to support and talk about things when they are good, but they have to be good. I wouldn't do it for just because that's what the system wants.
Mm-hmm. And the system is also good at pretending like it cares and it wants to change. So we have, and you have experience of this, we have diversity and inclusion committees headed by a person of color. We had a very ethnically diverse Conservative Party government who made life absolutely miserable for thousands, if not more,
millions
of color in the UK and millions around the world. And this is what the system does. The system tries to show the issue is we do care. Look at us, we care about people of color, but really they're upholding the system. And I do feel like some people of color do get trapped into that. But I also think that these systems care about perhaps class and status above race, which means that if you're somebody like a Rishi Sunak, who is one of the wealthiest people in the world, in some ways his brownness is okay because he's got access to a
money
part of society and money, and part of society that no people of color like myself would ever have access to. So it just completely, and you in the book detail that it's bigger than cricket, right?
You look at it. I've talked about Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, but I could have talked about many more. When was the last time we had not a person of color as a Home Secretary?
It's been a long time.
And that hasn't happened by coincidence. These things are the discourse, the language, the dehumanization, the Islamophobia. We got to a point where literally you are celebrated if you're racist towards Muslims. If you're Islamophobic, you are celebrated. That is where we've got to, but that hasn't happened overnight. And we saw the riots in the summer, and again we saw the counter demonstrations and stuff. And it's like, let's forget the riots because we are. And I hate this word tolerant. I don't want someone to be tolerant of me. It's like they are doing me some sort of a favor. They're tolerating my color or my culture. Some of the language and the understanding, and we said diverse. I think that's another thing. It was represented, not diverse. It was represented. So representation, diversity, inclusion, these are all different things. The system has put it all together. Look at us. We care. We're not racist. We care that we had an Eid event last week. And it's please, right? But like you said, and I've talked about in the book, The Uncomfortable Conversation the other way. Some of my biggest support came from a demographic that gets shut down in this conversation, middle-aged white men. And those that supported Yorkshire, those that to cover it up, to discredit me, to attack me, to this day, come from our community. The woman that decided that P-word was banter as part of that panel is a Muslim woman. So these are the things within that system that you are constantly battling against. And it's you are very quickly portrayed as the problem and the outsider, and that's something I deal with, as I said, in every conversation I have, because people have a perception of me and then they meet me, and actually I am a solutions-driven, forward-looking person. But what I will not do What I will not do is mask over reality. And what I will not do is be the front person for my people to be oppressed. Not going to do that. Just not going to do that. You ain't going to buy me. You ain't going to buy my voice. If you want to work together, let's do it. If you don't, that's fine. No problem. I think fear that I live with now is, will my boy and girl be called a packy? Will they have to have these conversations? Will they have to constantly battle just to be respected as human beings? And I will not be able to live with myself if it does happen, but knowing full well it probably will happen. But it can't be because of I didn't do whatever I could do. And yeah, I hope Allah keeps looking after me, because it's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think that is such a powerful and profound way to end this conversation today. It has been so wonderful speaking to you on the show today, Azeem. Thank you so much for your time today, but also everything that you've done and that you continue to do.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you.
I hope you loved listening to this episode and found things that will stay with you. I'd love to hear from you, so please do reach out on social media, and don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a review, as it can really help.